Juvenile crime, above all when mafia involved, merits specific attention in that it leads to situations that require intervention specifically calibrated to address the unique issues involved. Italy has engaged in a large project called Liberi di Scegliere that aims to address this phenomenon via the utilization of a multidisciplinary approach that makes teamwork the distinctive element within juvenile justice services. The objective of the project is to provide services within a systemic framework and disengage the minor from deviant behavior and lifestyle. The issue of juvenile justice and delinquency elicits at times both surprise and worry, despite the fact that crime statistics in general and juvenile delinquency in particular demonstrate a trend that tends to decrease. The widespread perceptions in civil society is that of an increasing in concern about crime and intolerance towards crime and delinquent acts. This anxiety often leads to calls for more repressive actions with little or no reflection on how the justice system operates in its attempt to rehabilitate and reintegrate offenders in society. The Department of Juvenile Justice within the Italian Ministry of Justice has sought to give life to a project, Liberi di Scegliere, which means free to choose, with the aim of containing juvenile delinquency in areas with a significant mafia presence and initiate a process of rethinking the practices employed by the juvenile justice systems in two regions in southern Italy, Calabria and Campania. The outcome of the mental and educational experiences demonstrates how 30 years of work, beginning with the enactment of the 1988 Code on Criminal Proceedings for Minors, constituted a functional approach in most of the country within juvenile justice seems to have failed in the regions involved in the project, both of which have a high level of mafia activity. The psychological and criminological complexity of the profiles and pathways undertaken by the juveniles involved, the severity of the crimes committed, the detachment from educational institutions, and the complexity of the work with the families render the tools that form the foundation for social work and rehabilitation inadequate. Juvenile justice in Italy has always sought to place educational work with minors who commit a crime at the forefront. This is a choice that places the Italian system amongst the most advanced in Europe. The system cannot ignore the challenges and needs to constantly verify and eventually rethink practices and intervention tools. IPRS with KPMG was awarded this project with a proposal whose strengths reside in the project's capacity to produce an in-depth analysis of the historical and social strengths in the Camorra and 'Ndrangheta, in the experimentation, amongst the first in Italy, of psychological and sociological profiling tools that are in use in many advanced justice systems. It is in the development of innovative tools for working with families, in rethinking network-based work with educational institutions, and finally, in pilot testing new working methods with 50 juvenile cases with a high level of complexity in terms of the social and criminological profile of the individuals involved. It must be recognized that the mafia often represents the only recognizable and foreseeable future for youth growing up in an area with a high mafia presence. The Liberi di Scegliere project has sought to reinforce services offered by the juvenile justice system, taking into consideration the complexity of the target group, guaranteeing the implementation of the intervention with the youth via the utilization of a continuous and multidisciplinary global approach that is capable of keeping together distinct areas of work while utilizing a perspective capable of permeating the psychological profile and carefully balancing skills and co-development with key actors in the area. This approach also foresees the establishment of a dialogue, where possible, with the minor's family of origin, or at least with some family members, as the family is considered to be a resource in the construction of a rehabilitation plan. Working with families also makes it possible to intervene in relation to other family members, notably siblings, that are not yet involved in crime. This allows for the prevention of delinquency via the use of innovative social work tools and may also include the community, such as the use of family group conferencing. The involvement of the community within restorative justice which entails a meeting between the victim and the offender where possible, can be used in areas with a high mafia presence. This represents an additional positive factor for rehabilitation plans with justice-involved youth that supports their ability to understand the effects of their criminal acts, thereby supporting a change in direction towards non-delinquency. A lot of research addresses the involvement of minors in the 'Ndrangheta and Camorra. In 2012, Di Bella, then president of the Juvenile Court of Reggio Calabria, identified network reinforcement as a renewed educational alliance between agencies as key to reintegration efforts with juveniles from mafia families. He further identified the methodological pillars for juvenile justice system action against the mafia in the specialization and enhancement of interventions that support reintegration programs. This experience, however, is not always replicable given the unique nature of different mafia groups. The project derives from the needs identified by Di Bella and proposed new practices that foresee more structured and multidisciplinary work with juvenile offenders. This includes pilot testing interventions in which local, private, and public agencies work with public institutions in activating reinforced specialized teams that provide psychological and social support to minors while maintaining juvenile justice actions in relation to the target group. The project's main objectives are to reduce mafia reliance on juvenile delinquency, develop plans coherent with the individual minor's needs for minors from mafia families, provide alternatives to the children of mafia families or those who live in an area with a high mafia presence. Secondary objectives aim to initiate a process of rethinking the practices used by the juvenile justice offices in the two southern regions. It is also to accompany the family of juvenile delinquents utilizing a systemic framework, support networking between actors that provide care or services to the minor. The project maximizes the value of multidisciplinary teamwork supported by continuous supervision. The following innovative methodologies maximize its efficacy. These include psychological and criminological profiling, entailing an in-depth clinical exploration of the minor's personal, family, and social contexts. Teamwork, supported by an online platform that enables various professionals to provide services to the minor concurrently. Work with the juvenile offender's family, which includes use of family group conferencing to create a support network that promotes non-deviant behavior within a systemic framework. The balancing of skills and support for specialized practitioners in promoting future prospects that reflect the minor's capacity and aspirations. And finally, the involvement of all local actors in integrating the minor while promoting a sense of community responsibility towards the conditions that promote delinquency in places with a high mafia presence. Victim offender mediation as a means to work on empathy and the acquisition of understanding of the effects of crime is also included. The mafia is not only an issue for Italy, even if it has its origins there. Numerous studies demonstrate that the various mafia groups have gained economic significance, which includes both legal and illegal activity in Europe and represent a dangerous and pervasive form of organized crime against which it appears increasingly difficult to intervene both in Europe and globally. Liberi di Scegliere is therefore a project that has a significant impact on mafia-related crime in that the project targets the mafia's new levers, reducing their stay within Italian and foreign criminal environments. The project tests new practices within juvenile justice involving the provision of services in response to complex, disadvantaged situations. A global intervention becomes necessary when the family of origin represents the source of the disadvantage. In such cases, the juvenile justice system cannot be the sole actor. The response must be multidisciplinary and integrated. Working in Italy on the specific needs of the target youth, as Liberi di Scegliere is doing, has a positive effect in Europe as well due to the weakening of the strength of the Italian mafia groups. European countries could utilize experience acquired via Liberi di Scegliere in the treatment of minors that are particularly at risk, testing the integrated work, evolving networks and teams that this project has adopted as its principal distinctive component. In general, when a minor enters the justice system, this entry should represent an opportunity to change the direction of the minor's life. Liberi di Scegliere allows minors to stop and engage in self-reflection, identifying their own skills and strengths, as well as the weaknesses they need to work on. In this sense, the minor becomes a protagonist in their own lives, even if they come from disadvantaged mafia environments or families. The minor has the opportunity to experience real-life alternatives. The psychological and criminological profiling, the balancing of competencies, and the constant teamwork are all replicable in any EU country.